From Las Vegas, I traveled on by Trailways bus to Denver in Colorado. The Colorado landscape was spectacular, but I was only able to take pictures when we halted for a rest stop. I had purchased a 9-day bus pass with Trailways and didn't have much time to stop off if I was to complete my journey to New York before the pass expired. My route continued eastwards across the Midwest, from Denver to Des Moines, where I changed buses once again for the next leg of my journey. The next leg of that journey took me on to Chicago, where I had considered taking an overnight break, but I couldn't find any cheap accommodation. Having travelled on to Detroit but failing to find suitable accommodation there, I continued on past the Great Lakes and into Canada. In the small town of Kingston, Ontario, I found a cheap bed and breakfast and enjoyed my first night in a bed for 3 days. The next morning I continued on to Toronto. This is the CN Tower, at that time the tallest freestanding structure in the world. From Toronto, I continued on up to Montreal. I spent a day looking around Montreal, but with no sign of cheap accommodation, I boarded yet another bus for the overnight journey back down to Toronto and then on to Niagara Falls. The heavy overnight rain subsided just as I reached Niagara, and I was treated to some fabulous early morning views of the falls. Later that day I caught a bus to Buffalo, and then on overnight to Pittsfield in Massachusetts, where I would spend the night in another homely bed and breakfast. The reason for breaking my journey in Pittsfield was to take pictures of the local countryside in the fall. I had arrived there at the right time, more by chance than judgment, and the foliage was at its peak. The next day I continued on to Boston. I was on the last day of my bus pass, so I didn't stop long in Boston and took my last bus ride down to New York. In New York I stayed with the mother of Dave Young, who I had travelled with in the Philippines, and spent a few days exploring the city. Here's another reminder of the passage of time since I made this journey. The Twin Towers are of course no longer there. Now near the end of my journey, I splashed out on a guided tour of the city and a helicopter ride. It was hard to take in, but my journey around the world that had started as a dream some 4 years previously was about to be completed. The day after this shot was taken, I boarded a Laker Skytrain DC-10 for the flight back to the UK, arriving home in Somerset the next day.